Do you ever just watch a film that you've basically already seen before? Like, it's got the same kind of style, or it's clearly like a remake to some degree, or it wears its inspiration so heavily on its sleeve. There are a lot of films like that. And realistically, most, if not all, films are like that. Some films are more obvious than others. I rewatched Alien the other week, and I adored the film, but then, you look at, I'm watching like the documentary The Beast Within slowly, because it's a 3 hour fucking documentary. I'm taking my goddamn time. But they're talking about how the film evolved from being Dark Star, which I'd watched the week prior, and was just, what if that was a horror film? But it's clearly got all these inspirations from other films that they've kind of put together. And like a film like that, sure, but in itself, as an end result, feels like a wholly original product. And so I watched Event Horizon last night, and I'm like, okay, I can see why a lot of people compare this to, like, it just felt like, I don't think I even saw any comparisons until after I watched the film, because I didn't like look at reviews or anything. I bought the 4K Deluxe Collector's Edition set. I'm like, I want to watch this because I've heard it's a pretty good cult horror film. I know it's Paul W.S. Anderson, but I still like some of his stuff and all this kind of jam. So there's a lot of shit going into it. And then I watched it, and I'm kind of like, yeah, this just feels like a bad ripoff of Alien. Like, I know Alien had come out like 20 years earlier, and sure, we have a lot of advancements in digital effects, but this was just like it felt like a bad version of that, despite being somewhat dissimilar. Obviously from the element of there's no aliens, plus it's a ship they find a ship that's in space, not on a planet, despite it being outside of Neptune, and it's still sending a signal, and the classified nature of it, Sam Neill's character being veiled as basically being the actual bad guy, even though he kind of is toted like, maybe he's neutral, because again, but there's no real protagonist except for him, because you start with his point of view anyway. And then it's like, oh, it's not aliens, and they're not incubated through a fucking facehugger or shit, it's ideas that are hellish because the ship actually has gone into a black hole, into another dimension that's basically hell, and then it's come back. And it's like, cool, okay, high concept, I guess. Sure, I can work with that. That sounds great, except that's basically the twist of the movie, which I think is the more bullshit thing. Because it's like, come on. Like, as a mystery thing, 20 years later, it's just 25 years later, it's not as interesting of a film, because you're watching it thinking, I know what's going to happen. Because I know what the concept of the movie is, that it's this whole thing of them being on hell, but like, I'm watching it and thinking all this shit, but then the other, month ago, whatever, I watched the Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. And it wasn't until after that film I was looking at the reviews while I did my Letterboxd review, and a lot of people were saying it's just a bad ripoff of, Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. And with Reservoir Dogs, I wholeheartedly agree, but I hadn't noticed it when I was watching it, whereas I'm watching Event Horizon, and yeah, I can see it, it's just, maybe it's because I'd watched Alien last week, but I've watched Alien a lot for the past 20 years. I've watched Alien a hell of a lot, So, not 20, but maybe 15. I watched it when I was like 6 for the first time. And so, give it 2 more years, then it'll be 20 years of watching Alien. Yeah, it's fucking scary. But it's just so amusing to me that, like, I liked Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, but I didn't care much for Event Horizon. Now, it's not a terrible film, but it's like, for me, it had bad direction and bad script. The effects, the digital effects weren't fantastic, very dated, but, it is what it is. But, like, the practical stuff, the cast was great, but then their acting wasn't so fantastic, which I mostly blame on a bad script. The concept was great, and it looked fantastic, because it's a 4K UHD review, re-release, remaster, all that kind of jazz. But yeah, there's just so many films, and it's like, it makes me think of, is there like an order of which you can watch films? But realistically, there isn't. It's not like there's anything that came after Event Horizon in particular that made me think, oh, I maybe shouldn't have watched this until I watched Event Horizon. It's like, nah, because I watched Alien, and Alien preceded this film by almost 20 years. And then I was thinking this film is like, Event Horizon's like a bad version of Alien, Sunshine, and Jason X. Something that is one film that's classified as a complete masterpiece, perfection of cinema, sci-fi, horror, all that kind of stuff, that being Alien. Then you got a kind of mid-level film, which I'd say some people would say mid-level because it does end with a big high-concept idea, this being Sunshine. But I really like Sunshine. I like the way it's executed. I like even the final act, how it completely changes itself. It's basically a better version of Event Horizon. Actually, I think it's a much fucking better version of Event Horizon. There feels like there's more stakes, there's more horror, there's more care about the characters. Everything about it is a better film. Even though realistically, on a Paul W.S. Anderson scale, I think Resident Evil is actually a better version of Event Horizon. But it's like, you got Sunshine, so I'm mostly pointing it for a genre rather than, I guess horror is genre, sure, but like space sci-fi genre, that kind of deal. So otherwise I would totally also pin Resident Evil with that in like the mid-range of like, not so critically regarded, maybe not so fan regarded, but still maybe a semi-decent film. I feel like Sunshine's also pinned that way. Maybe it's a bit more critically regarded, but not so much audience-wise. I've always heard mixed things, but I've always loved it, so I don't really give a shit. But then the low end of the scale is Jason X, a film, B-movie, 10th movie in a fucking franchise of just slasher films. But this time, it's high concept because it's Jason in space. And it's like, that's fantastic. I love that. Because it's also a tongue-in-cheek movie. It knows what the fuck it is. It's dumb as shit, but I love it. And it makes me wonder, like, you can't really, like, backtrack all of history for cinema and be like, I'm going to watch a film from the 90s and pretend that nothing came before it. Like, that's not how cinema works. The whole, like, fashion of cinema is the fact that it comes from something else, usually. Everything is usually built on something else. Even the most original concept films have inspirations worn on their sleeve, either through visual style, through directing, through acting, through production. There's always something that's like another film. Everything fits into a genre, so even the most obscure, random, like, cult indie films or whatever, like, even they have some kind of similarity to another film. And also just because they're all the same kind of format. It's film, it's video and audio in a presentation that's usually 60 or more minutes long. Maybe it's 40 if you really want to go crazy. Maybe it's 3 to 4 hours, or that 7-hour version of War and Peace. There's all this kind of stuff that goes into movies as it is. And I don't think there's any possibility that you can go into a movie without thinking of other movies. But sometimes you can. Like, again, I went into Denver and watched that kind of blind to its comparisons to Reservoir Dogs and whatever, which, again, it's basically Reservoir Dogs, which I'm perfectly fine with because I liked its style, but I was looking at it more of, it's a stylish crime noir, but like kind of a neo-noir because it's in the 90s, and of course to some subtextual, like in the back of my head, thinking of Tarantino films and stuff, because it's also got that sly dialogue, you got the kooky character names and stuff like that, you got the interesting way that the story is being presented. It's very much there in that style of stuff, but I didn't dislike it because I liked the execution, I liked how it was presented. And I know a lot of people haven't. That's not as well treated as a film in terms of it being like a cult classic or any of that shit. So it's not like there is an impossibility to look at a film and just not think of other films. But at the same time, I'm also thinking while I was watching it of, this is a crime noir. Because it is. It's a noir, but neo-noir, So it's like, I'm thinking of the genre, so I'm getting all these characteristics from other films, but not thinking of a specific film. I'm thinking of an umbrella, because it's the genre. And I'm thinking of just the different elements that'll pop into this film and whatever. But I'm just watching it as I'm watching it. I'm not thinking, oh shit, I wonder if that's going to happen at the end. No, I know they're probably all going to die or something. No, I don't mind. It's about how it's told. So, I don't know. I don't really know what I'm trying to get at here. Like, what's the moral of the story, Julian? I don't fucking know. Like, it's just one of those things where, especially nowadays when you get to the pretense of, we want original cinema, but everything is built off of something, Original cinema is inspired by something else. Like, that's half the joy of cinema, is that it builds off of its own backbone of itself. Like, I know that there are the duller versions of that when you got generic blockbuster films, especially like the current Marvel slate and whatever, which most of the time lack imagination. And maybe people just want more imaginative films, but then people aren't going to go out and watch more imaginative films. They want to watch shit that they're used to, that they're happy and comfortable with watching. But then they'll also complain, oh, we need more movies that are more interesting and different. I liked Nope that came out recently. That was really interesting. It came off an idea of something else that I've basically seen. In fact, various other versions of the same kind of movie. But this one took a different approach to it, and for that made it exceptionally unique. Like every part of this film just felt exceptionally unique, whilst also being a commentary in itself about cinema. So it's just one of those things of there's a metatextual presence to movies, especially nowadays, which I wouldn't say would be in something like Event Horizon. I don't want to give it that much credit that it's metatextual. I know that was very much the thing and has been since the 90s, but I don't think in this film, fucking Jason X was more metatextual because it knew what the fuck it was. Like this, there's a scene where to distract Jason, they get him to go into a hologram room, much like Star Trek, and they make a simulation of a cabin in the woods, you know, of two girls camping in the woods, just like Jason would be used to. And they're two blonde, big boob bimbos, and they're like pillow fighting, whatever. And then it cuts to them in sleeping bags, and he's smacking them together and smacking them on trees and shit because it's a joke. The whole fucking scene is meant to be a joke, and it's hilarious. But it's just one of those things of like, if you'd never seen a Friday the 13th film before, why the fuck would you watch Jason X first? But like, which is ironic, because that was actually the first ever Friday the 13th film I ever saw, was Jason X. It was just on TV one day, and I thought it was great. But I had this knowledge already of what these films were. I just hadn't seen them yet. So that was the first ever film I saw of that whole entire franchise. I'm like, hey, this film's pretty goofy. I like it, you know? Over-the-top gore, unnecessary nudity, all that kind of jazz, you know? You get all the staples. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I'll be watching a film, occasionally, think of better films, and then be like... But I usually only will make it a complaint when the film in particular I'm watching, say Event Horizon, has a great idea or something, but like, and maybe sure, it reminds me of Alien or makes me think of Jason X or fucking Sunshine, but it's also like, the main reason why it's making me think of those films is because this film is lacking something. In this case, I think Event Horizon lacked a good script. You know, it's just one of those things of like, I can see them trying to do Alien with a different kind of concept, but a similar execution, similar kind of idea, but it's just not as interesting and not as scary or not as tense or whatever the fuck. Whereas something like Sunshine isn't really trying to be a horror. It's a sci-fi drama that becomes a horror film by the end of it, because the idea, which grows more and more impendingly terrifying, of resetting the sun. So it's basically a suicide mission from the get-go. It isn't really, because the whole point is that they have a bomb, but then they find a different ship, which was initially meant to do this job, and it's like, oh, now it goes kooky bananas. And I like that has a similar kind of visual style to Event Horizon. But again, it just feels like a more achieved version. It does something that I think works better for it, which is interesting to say, because a lot of people thought that the end of Sunshine, at least the last half an hour, was completely detracted what the rest of the film was. But so is Event Horizon. The last, 20 minutes, it becomes an action film. Look, explosions, fight scenes. None of it's terrifying, except for, I guess, the fact that Sam Neill's in this weird costume where he's got all these fucking cuts and shit, but we're mostly focusing on an extreme close-up of his face. So we don't really get to see it, because the filmmakers realize how goofy it looks. Because it does. At least with Sunshine, they used a visual style to make it look all wobbly and shit because of how hot it was getting in the film. There's a fucking reason for why it has this visual style, to make the villain, the twist villain, basically, who completely changes this fabric of the film, but it becomes a character that works better as a villain, and it's kind of goofy, but it works for what it's doing, and the visual style helps to inform that. So it's just, I don't know. Film is what it is. Consistently inspired by what's come before it, consistently inspiring what's going to come after it. And it's not like you can escape the fact that I'm going to watch a film and be like, I'm thinking of this other film instead. No. Look, The only reason I was thinking of Alien whilst watching Event Horizon, outside of it being on my mind for the past week and a half, was just the factor of I'm like, this is a bad version of Alien, but also because it's nothing that this film is presenting is making me interested in it, is making me feel like it's new or fresh or interesting. And even when the high concept twist comes into it, I'm kind of zoned out by that stage because the film just is lackluster. So, anyway, give me your thoughts on films that you've had like that where you've watched it and been like, I know there's a better version of this film that I could be watching, but because this is something kind of different, maybe I'll see what it does, you know. A lot of ad campaigns are all like, oh, it's like this movie mixed with this movie. I'm like, why would I need to know that? Let me just tell me what the fucking movie is and I'll go watch it, you know? Give me a slight little drip of what the movie's about so I can get some interest, you know? That's all. Thanks for watching. Just kind of wanted to have a rant about that because it just was in my mind of just how, yeah. And again, not a bad thing. It kind of makes me sound like I feel like I'm saying it's a bad thing that movies are so inspired by the previous thing that you can't discern one from the other. But it's like, but you can. It's possible. It's just sometimes the execution of the film that you're watching that reminds you of a different film isn't as good as the film that you've already watched. That's all. Again. Yeah.